What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Ancient Wisdom, your weekly Pokemon TCG podcast. My name is Corey Roush. With me, as always, is DJ Keener. DJ, how are you today?
I'm living the dream, Corey. Having a great time as always. Happy to be talking about Pokemon. How are you?
Good to be back. While Zenith was not a huge set, and we're gonna get into that some today, it was enough that I was like, "Ooh, I want to try things again." And like most of it's just nonsense, but that's okay. We have what, like 7 weeks till Scarlet Violet, so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel
and
like
then
nonsense from here on out.
yeah, I mean, there's some nonsense. There's some real cards, and I mean, that's kind of enough. A couple brews to work on, a couple things to try in real decks. It's kind of enough to keep things at least a little bit interesting, even if it gives us like 3 or 4 of those weeks where it still feels fresh and fun. That's kind of enough to at least salvage what was starting to feel like kind of a slog.
Yeah, and like we saw it this week in Liverpool, which even though it's still the same for like Zenith wasn't legal yet, right? But we still have seen some things kind of adapt, and I think that while this format is forever because it's so long, and then the only new thing you get in it, and over the course of the better part
Yeah,
of like 5 months is like 8 new cards. Um, there's still definitely room for adaptation. But before we get into that, has Zenith been taking up your time over the last few days, or has it been something you
yeah,
saw in
yeah.
Liverpool, or where are you
I
at?
was oh, hi Brick. I was kind of reinvigorated by Lost Box. Just such a fun deck to play. I think we talked about that a little bit last week, and from there, I mean, luckily Zenith has some different things you can try in there, whether it's the stone or just Zamazenta and other uh, Lost Box lists, or even
Hmm.
maybe playing both. So I've messed with that a decent bit. Um, that's what most of my gameplay for myself has been. A lot of different comfy Zamazenta decks, and been thinking about Shatteradder a lot, though I haven't built it. I don't have the cards in real life or on PTZG Live, so haven't had a chance to try that one myself yet. But definitely one of the decks I kind of want to talk about today. What about you? What have you been playing? I know you're a
Def
comfy fan as well.
yeah. A lot of Lost Box, a variety of things. I haven't tried one yet with. I've worked on a list for one with the Sky Seal Stone. I've not played it yet in person because I packed pretty well out of my six total ETBs, but did not pack a Sky Steel Stone, so it's
Yeah,
on its way.
waiting for that to come in.
Yeah, I like. It's funny. Like I said, I packed really well, but I missed Eternatus and I missed Sky Steel Stone,
Yeah,
so it really limits what I can play in person, at least in the meantime. But luckily, everything is, other than like, unless you want to go
here,
like
go
super
buddy.
building, everything's pretty reasonable. But so yeah, I've been playing a lot of Lost Box things online, and a couple things that came out from um Liverpool. But the other Zenith deck that I kind of touched on briefly that I've actually really enjoyed so far uh, is Rotom V-Star. I don't know if that deck's going to be great or even good, but it is a lot of fun to play, whether it be a variant with Shopping Center or a variant with the Single Strike Stadium and that package. I've really enjoyed playing it.
And what does Shopping Center do? We talked about the Single Strike Stadium, Tower of Darkness last time, but I actually have missed Shopping Center. That's a new one for me too.
So Shopping Center is a stadium that says while it is in play, you may pick up your tools at as much as you want. So you are
Okay.
able to kind of like, if you need an EXP share to keep the electric energy rolling, but then now you're the V Star and you don't want that on your thing, you can switch it out for a Parasol if you need it, or something like that. So it gives you a little
Okay.
bit. It allows you to over tool early, and then like just in case you need certain things,
Mhm.
um, while also kind of keeping things open for the late game. Or if you need like another tool in the bin and you have one
Yeah,
stuck
you
on
can
board,
pick
you
it
can
up and
just
discard
discard it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
interesting.
yeah, like I said, I think that I'm not sure which is necessarily better. I think that the single strike one gives you more draw power, but being able to not be stuck with like the seal stone after you use it, or like I said, use the XP share
Hmm.
is appealing. So if nothing else, I think the deck's really interesting. I think the Rotom is something that uh, I would not be surprised. It just the V itself. I would not be surprised if it sees more play when the format slows down post rotation, just because
Hmm.
that draw three ability on it is very good.
Yeah, it's definitely not bad.
But I'm intrigued. I think the deck's really cool. I love that whenever we were talking about it offline, that like we were sharing lists, and you're like, wait, this Articuno's existed this whole time. How do I not know that there's a
Yeah,
draw
this is
card that?
exactly
Yeah.
the kind of card that I would jam into random decks because discard two to draw a card is like pretty reasonable in a lot of the crap piles.
Hmm.
and
It's funny that all of the birds have seen play except for that one, and if it comes up now, that'd be pretty cool.
It'd be really funny. It also in this deck works really really well with the toolbox. The look at your top seven, add all of the tools to your hand, because you can definitely just fill your hand with crap and discard it. So,
Hmm.
and I think that's really interesting. I guess let's just start talking about the Road on deck some more. So
Sure.
have you played that at all, or just kind of looking at it, thinking about brews?
I've probably played like probably under 10 games, but enough that like and like I've watched some of it too because I
Yeah.
just enjoy it. But yeah,
So
so a
I
little bit.
guess let me ask you this: have you played the Electrode in there, or is that something that you haven't tried yet?
I actually so that's where I started.
Okay.
Uh, and I like it.
Okay.
I I don't know if it's I like it because it allows you to cut back on EXP shares and like play other tools like depending on the situation. And I like that the one of the Voltorbs is a single strike stamped card, so you can still
Hmm.
pitch it off the stadium should that be needed. Uh, it like it doesn't typically hurt you giving away the prize,
Hmm.
so I'm intrigued by it, but I don't know if it's correct. But
Okay.
like whenever it's good, it's like it's broken. But
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point because I was kind of struggling with without the Electrode. You have to figure out whether you're going to play more EXP shares to keep it going, so you can keep attacking every turn, keep your Rotom powered up, or like maybe you play some Rye hands with Luminion. Even just one might be enough. And so like I don't know, that was an interesting one to me. I've seen lists with multiple electrodes, lists with like a 1-1 line. That you don't have a ton of ways to set it up then,
yeah.
which is I guess what you kind of have to balance. And then like lists with more of the toolbox item
Hmm.
to just fill your hand up with the energies or with the tools, excuse me, and then use the Articuno or any of the various research, Serena, whatever it may be, to discard down and just play a bunch of EXP shares so that you can keep using those to power up your chain of Rotom Vs to keep attacking. Um, have you tried a version like that with a bunch of EXP shares?
I have. That's so like I said, and for anyone that doesn't know, the Electrode that we're referring to as an ability Buzz Zap generator that once per turn, if it is
Mhm.
on your bench, you can send it to the discard, take two, or actually like sacrifice it so your opponent gets a prize, and you attach two basic lightning from your deck to one of your lightning Pokemon. So
Say
um,
throwback to the base set Electrode for anyone who has been a longtime Pokemon fan.
it's a pretty common Electrode thing. So like if you have any recollection of Electrode, that's probably where your head was at. But yeah, that is the juxtaposition, right? Is you're either playing that or you're playing a stack of EXP shares. I've tried both. I don't like it's awkward because and maybe it's I think the list you sent me before we jumped on that I've not tried yet was playing less speed lightning than basic energy, and I would probably be okay with the EXP share in that regard. I feel like whenever you're playing like a lot of the lists I'd seen before that were like 4 speed and then probably
Yeah,
like 4 to 5
five,
basic.
5-4. Yeah,
If you have that many speeds, the EXP share list is such a struggle because I feel like you're always, especially early game, you're attaching those speeds to try to get your game plan going.
right. To get moving.
So it's awkward because that doesn't work with EXP share, but there's obviously merits to both. And if I was playing like I said, if I was playing 4 EXP share, I think I'd probably stray away from the single strike version. I'd probably look more
You'd be
towards
looking
playing
more
that
at the
shopping
shopping
center
center.
because I don't want to be like it doesn't actually tend to matter, but like if I have a chance where I'm gonna like not be able to attach like a choice belt or a big parasol or a big charm or one like this, you can put the
Yeah,
seal stones on your support Pokemon, but like because I'm stuck. Well, I had to get out. I had to make sure that I was able to continue my flow of attack, and that sucks. So like I'd
sure,
probably
sure.
switch at that point.
No, that makes sense. The thing that like stood out to me with playing like the EXP shares and the Tower of Darkness is that you are at the point where you're starting to get like really loaded up on the tools, and I've mentioned the card toolbox 5 separate times now, but that's another way that you can like keep the gas flowing to pitch great cards in your hand to pitch both the Tower and Articuno, so that you can not only keep digging but actually put enough of those tools into your discard pile that you're threatening knockouts every turn with Rotom, which is interesting to me. Um, there's also like a bit of an angle here to figure out as far as like how many different like utility tools you want to play, because like you don't really have a way to search out specific tools, um and unless you play that shopping center, and you probably could play a mixture of the stadiums. Actually, I don't see a reason why you couldn't play four
Yeah,
or five stadiums with a mixture of both. But unless you play the shopping center, like you don't have a way to search them. You need to equip those EXP shares or air balloons or whatever, It's going to be hard to get those tech tools into play. So I don't know. There's something there to mess with, I think, but like without doing the math, I mean, a decent number of times that item is like draw two tools out of your top seven. Like that's good value when you have those discard effects. So that's sort of where my head is. I guess I want to go faster with it. Only because like you're playing like a weaker deck, so I want to be threatening those knockouts and digging through to find my good setup every game if I can. Um, but I haven't tried the electrode at all. I haven't tried the deck personally yet either. Just like looking at it, but I haven't really considered putting the electrode in any of the lists that I'm kind of like theory crafting. So I guess
Yeah.
that's kind of what I need to try next.
Yeah, I think this is a deck that we're like. It's funny. It plays very similarly to, in some ways, to the Hisui and Zoroark deck,
Mm.
which I think both of us hated. But I like this, and I don't know if it's just like,
Um,
to
I guess I would challenge that a little bit. I don't know that we
go.
hated Zoroark so much as, and this was not about this deck at all. Just as much as like we never felt like it was well positioned.
Yeah, you're right. I guess when I say hated, it's I never felt compelled to play it, whereas
Yeah,
this I
yeah.
do.
Yeah, I can see that because like the V stars are very similar. They're both trying to do something. You know, they both have this like discard pal synergy with Zoroark. It's the Gengars. With this deck, it's the Tolls, and they're attacking for their goal is to attack for knockout. Um, when you put it that way, it's hard for me to justify this over Zoroark when that tech attacks for a DCE compared to or DT compared to us needing to set up multiple energies. But
So there are a couple things that I would say go in this deck's favor, right? I think this one, obviously, being able to hit Lugia for
yeah, I
weakness should
mean,
that come
being
up is
lightning is super relevant.
it's like the base ability is just
That's a good
so
setup ability, right? Right.
and like the V Star power is just better. And like the fact that you're able to like utilize something like a Sky Seal Stone and that if like you can attack with just basic Rotom V and you're actually able to take a knockout on a V Star or V Max,
Mm-hmm.
typically just Lugia, but like when that comes up, you're not able to do that in Zoroark because you're just never going to hit the
Right.
damage. So like
Right.
I think there's enough things going in this deck's favor that I would probably prioritize this, but
Sure.
you could convince me either way.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and definitely, we've talked about this plenty already, but definitely a deck that we want to try out and play some of. So
Hmm.
if I happen onto the V Stars, I'll definitely be giving this a try and seeing what we can get done with it because there's something here. I mean, the numbers can be good, the engine is interesting. It's not something we've really played with before, and yeah, obviously being a lightning attacker is good. I mean, people play Dunsparce obviously, but you know you're allowed to play boss's orders. You're allowed to deal with the Dunsparce, and then suddenly all of their Lugias are threatened with one shots.
Yeah, no, that yeah, absolutely. Um, so what else? What are the other decks you wanted to talk about from?
Yeah, I think the other one is the other one we mentioned, and we'll talk about Lost Box last. I think because it's the most obvious one and kind of the least changes, even though it's probably the most nuanced. But I think Shadow Rider looks really interesting, and
Yeah.
Shadow Rider was obviously extremely popular for a long time, but just for the people who haven't been following for so long, Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX has the ability Underworld Door. Once per turn, you can attach a psychic energy from your hand to one of your bench psychic Pokemon, and if you attach an energy this way, draw two cards. Then its attack for triple colorless Max Geist does 10 plus 30 more damage for each psychic energy attached to all of your Pokemon. Obviously, the thing that is making this card pop back up now is Radiant Eternatus. So when you play Radiant Eternatus, you get to just put two of these Shadow Rider VMAXs onto your bench, your turn ends, but the fact that it's a built-in acceleration ability makes that turn ending a lot less painful. That's going to give you more cards back, so you're not feeling as punished as you would in some other decks for having like a Eternatus over Radiant Greninja. You're going to get cards back instead of needing Greninja to help you dig through your deck. And yeah, I mean, like I said, Shadow Rider was kind of broken, right? That was like the deck for a while.
Oh yeah.
Um, and obviously, there's a number of reasons, like the power level on the card is lower than some other stuff that we have now, but like that ability is really good. And, you know, you're a bulky VMAX, so that's obviously going to be in your favor. You have 320 HP just to start with. Um, you know, you can power a number of different things up. You can use it as your own attacker. You can play Mewtwo V Star as your attacker. You have Eternatus, you can do some toolboxy stuff. The only other one that really seems to fit here to me is Espeon. Um, I don't know. Or do you think there's any other VMAXs you could shimmy in here?
I don't think so. I don't because and I don't have Calyrex up. Does it only attach to other psychic Pokemon? I can't remember the exact wording on the card.
I believe it's only to other psychic Pokemon. Yes.
I mean, that would make
Yeah,
sense,
other
right?
psychic
Okay.
Pokemon. Yeah.
Yeah, but like, because like I think the only other like
Psychic
relevant,
VMAX Mew.
yeah, well, yeah, it's like
Doesn't
Mew,
count,
and it's
obviously.
the new Hatterene, which doesn't do any, like, doesn't do enough. So, yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, this deck was like it's funny because it was during a time where no one was paying attention
Mm.
because
Yeah, it's the strictly online era.
but like that deck was insane. That deck was absolute insanity, and it came at a time where hitting for psychic weakness was relevant, but also you had access to Gengar and Mimikyu tag team GX, which powering that up and just turning your opponent's like you were just ending games so quickly. So it was just a different era.
The other one, I knew there
Uh,
was another VMAX that was in the deck when it was actually real. The other one that you could consider is Alcremie VMAX, by the way,
oh yes, yes, yes. I forgot that existed.
which
Yeah,
can hit for a lot. So
yeah. You can one shot anything, which is relevant. I guess the trade off is that Mewtwo V Star basically does that while while only discarding
yeah,
3 energy. So.
the question I think is whether you want something else that you can get off
Oh no, I
Eternatus.
know,
But
I
I
understand.
sort of agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the deck's really cool. It's nice that the shadow like you're obviously gonna play less of the basic Vs because you're an Eternatus deck,
Mhm.
but like Shadow Rider Calyrex, like the V is has already seen some play, and like you can just lock certain decks out of existing, which is kind of cool. Like
Yeah, yeah. The
if you
Shadow
play a
Mist
Collapse
attack.
Stadium, you just
Yeah,
turn
just
off Regis. So
bricks Reggies. There's a decent number of situations where like Mew has to find a way to deal with that by like getting it out of your active and hoping you can't represent it next turn if they're not already set up. Like the regular V is funny enough, just like an extremely good card. Um,
yeah, so it's an the deck like the deck was already interestingly positioned. Like you would see it pop up every once in a while online,
right,
right?
right.
Before we got the Eternatus, and I think the Eternatus only makes it better.
Well, I think the
So
Eternatus is the thing that brings it to the point that I think the deck could be good, not just like,
yeah,
oh, like
not
I
just a
had these cards
meme.
from
Yeah.
before, so I'm just gonna play this deck. It's something different. Like it popped up briefly when Mewtwo came out, when Pokemon Go
Yep.
was released, and ultimately fell off because like that was determined probably to be the best way to play Mewtwo, but still wasn't quite good enough. Um, but I think the Eternatus does give you enough like extra velocity in your deck that it might be worth it. Um, that being said, the deck is like really reliant on the Eternatus when you look at it that way. So
Hmm.
there's some risks there. You have to be able to beat Path to the Peak if your opponent paths you early on. You have to worry about prizing it though. You can play History and Heavy Ball, obviously, and even cards to search out Heavy Ball, which I think is always an option. And yeah, I mean, one nice thing too is that the deck's not like so reliant on like its supporters for card draw. I mean, I think most lists are going to play a bunch of research because it's kind of inherently a little bit clunky, but it's
Hmm.
not like Lugia where like you have to be playing like researches every turn because you need to put Archeops into your graveyard, um, or like a deck that needs to care as much about what it discards. Like, yeah, you need basic energies to do your stuff, but you don't need all of them. It's not a deck that like you're really constrained by your resources, which is cool. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think this one's really cool. You can use the Seal Stones because you don't have a V Star unless you play Mewtwo. I guess like if you're just playing Mono Calyrex, that's something too. And if you choose not to
Hmm.
play Mewtwo and play like the Alcremie or something, yeah, I don't know. I'm intrigued by this. I think it's a strong deck. I'm not sure that it like makes a dent in the format necessarily. It did do well in some online tournaments already, but they were kind of smaller. Um, but I'm kind of interested to see where it goes. Do you think this has, I guess, any real staying power? Is this a real deck, or is this like another? I'm trying to think of what like the next tier of decks would be, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, like I don't think it's going to necessarily push into tier one. Like I think we're pretty established here with what we have there, but like could it be like the next tier below that? Like not one like I guess so many people do like 1.5, and 2. I would say it's probably a tier 2 deck, but I don't like if you saw like is it on the Dialga level? Probably. I
Sure.
don't know if that's a compliment or you know what I mean, but like
Well, so I guess your point when you say that, I mean, just I don't want to put words in your mouth, so Dialga just made day 2 in an event. We see it pop
Yeah,
up occasionally in top 8s of online tournaments. Like, this is a deck that you could show up to a regionals with, a 1,000 player tournament almost, make day 2 with. You're probably not top 8ing, you're almost certainly not winning the event. But I
yeah.
mean, it's not unreasonable for you to win 8 games in 14 rounds or whatever, which is which is
I don't think
fine,
so.
right? That's all a lot of people are asking for when they sign up. And if you have an affinity for these cards, that's great. Shadow Rider is a fun card to play. Like, putting an energy, you get to accelerate and draw 2 cards. Like, that's nutty.
Yeah,
And if you can use like Scoop Up Net with Eternatus, so you can set up all 4 of them, which I mean, you are off to the races at that point, right? And as an additional way to accelerate damage into play, like, you can use the net with a Galarian Articuno, the regular one, get more energies into play. I don't know. I think there's something here. I'm not
yeah,
sure how good it is, but I think I agree with you. It's probably in like the same tier that ultimately I would put the Rotom deck in.
yeah.
So
That's probably fair. I think it's a little bit, even though like Rotom plays like so many like different bricks with the tools. Like I think that deck's a little bit clunkier because like you just have so many Pokemon too. Like you play like 14 energy and a ton of Pokemon, but
yeah, I mean, I guess like the list I'm looking at right now has 13 Pokemon. This other one has 15 Pokemon. That's not a
okay,
crazy
that's not bad. I
amount.
thought
I
it was
mean,
more than that.
yeah, this one that has 13, you could easily, like, you probably would want to play another Pokemon or two in here. This doesn't have any additional attackers. This list just has a 4/4 Shadow Rider line, a Crobat V, a Drapion V, the Radiant Eternatus, Pumpkaboo, and Pyukumuku. So you can take the Puke out, obviously, too, pretty easily. And I mean, there's something to that, like, streamlining of the deck. But
Yeah,
I mean, I would certainly want to have, like I said, that Galarian Articuno to accelerate damage into play. And I think you need some other attacker, and there's enough matchups that like Espeon is just insane against. I think that's kind of a crazy card not to include. I think the Mewtwo is sort of the wild card, whether you want to play that for additional damage or if you think you can make something like just the Shadow Riders and maybe Espeon or Alchemy work for you.
yeah. I would say that's where I'm currently undecided. Right, is that I've tried it with both with and without
Mm-hmm.
Mewtwo, and I honestly have not felt that Mewtwo adds a ton. Like
Yeah.
it's good. Like I understand why it's good, but like I could just as easily cut it and play like the other utility
Well, you
things.
cut it and
So
then you get to play Sealstone, fit more utility cards in,
that's what I mean.
pick
Yeah.
like
So
an additional VMAX attacker. And I know when you do that, you get even more reliant on the Eternatus, but I mean, that's probably fine.
I mean that's
Like, that's
it's a build around card. That's what we're
right,
here
and
for with this
that's where
deck.
the deck came from, right? Like, the deck had been completely off the radar. Like, brief testing when Pokemon Go came out. 6 months later, completely off everyone's radar. Nobody wants to play it. We get one new card. Like, that's your good card, right? That's your ace here. That's the reason we're playing the deck. So build around it, abuse it,
Yep.
do what you can with it.
Yep.
Um, you know, and if you're terrified of like it being prized, play an Irida or a Skyla to search your heavy ball. Like, you do what you have to get hit your Eternatus turns 1, and I think the ideal situation is to play it back to back turns and set up all of your Shadow Riders and plus whatever you're attacking with, whether that's one of their Shadow Riders or if you want to get uh you know Espeon, Alchemy,
Yeah.
Mewtwo if you're playing it. So, I think there's something here. I think this is a really cool deck. I think there's a decent enough power level, but yeah, I'm with you. This is probably, I like Dialga tier as a explanation. This is a deck that can make day 2. It's going to be really fun to play. If you like the cards, great, but this is never going to be, I shouldn't say never, I've been wrong about less or easier predictions. This isn't going to break into tier 1 in my opinion, though.
Don't worry, we'll get into some of those predictions that we were pretty wrong on in a little bit. So,
Yeah, yeah, true.
so do you want to touch on Zenith Lost Box before getting into Liverpool, or
Yeah, I think so. Just since this is kind of what we've been working on a lot over the last week. I mean, I don't know that there's a ton to say. I think the Sky Seal Stone lists are probably the most unexplored space. Um, and simultaneously, the thing that I'm the least excited for personally, I just don't want to put that many two prizers in my Lost Box deck. I don't want to
yeah,
have to play, you start asking yourself how many you need to play, and like, I don't think you actually need to play Drapion in Lost Box, so there's one that I don't really want to play. Um, like, Luminion's fine, but I don't really. You can't afford to let it sit on your bench for multiple turns in a deck where you're like trying to prize trade super effectively with your mono one prize deck. So that's difficult. Like, it is very good in the deck, so worth considering, obviously. But like, you know, high risk, high reward, I guess. There, if you wanted to play Sky Seal, that's an easy one to put in. Dragonite is obviously good, so there's one there. So you can get to two quickly, I guess, that way. And then the question is, how many Vs do you need? Are we putting fighting energy in and playing Galarian Zapdos? That seems gross. Are we playing what was the other one that I've messed around with a
Raikou?
little bit? Yeah, Raikou V. Like that's fine, but the card's also not very good. It's worse than the one prize Lightning, so you're playing it just to justify the stone. I
Yeah,
don't know. You were a little more gung ho on that version. I was in the thing just to circle back to one card that said you really don't need in the deck. Like it is just a game if you have Drapion in the stone against Mew. You kind of can't lose the matchup anymore. But I don't know. It's still just kind of gross to me.
yeah.
What are your thoughts? What have you messed with? What are you envisioning? And sell me on this, I guess.
Well, again, yeah, it's the one I've tested the least, so there's a very solid chance that once I finally test it, I change my mind. But I'm at least intrigued. I think that like it's awkward, right? Because like the idea of knocking out something like finishing a Duraludon VMAX off with a Dragonite after you flip that is broken. And like you said about Drapion and
Yeah,
Mew is broken. Or Raikou kind of sucks against Lugia, like by comparison to the other lightning attackers, but if it's taking three and they're taking two in return, it's not as bad.
yeah.
I I don't know.
My issue with the
I
Raikou is that like it doesn't have the upside of being a one prizer when you're just chipping for damage
yeah.
because they have the Dunsparce and like I don't know. It's just so vulnerable. It's I don't know. I'm just not. I've
You don't
disliked
have
the
to sell me
Raikou
on
every
Raikou
time I've
being
tried it.
mediocre
Tried it.
because so last week I played. Was it last week or the week? It doesn't matter. Why? Who cares?
Yeah. You
I
played
played the,
Kyogre last box, but with
yeah,
the
I played
Raikou.
Kyogre last week, and I did not have a zero aura, and the store didn't, so I ended up having to play Raikou.
Mm.
And if my opponent, like, I was like one turn away from it absolutely costing me
Mm.
because like your prize trade is so strict there. So,
Yeah.
I'm not like I said, I'm not hugely sold on the Raikou necessarily, but like if there's enough of a spread where you're going to be playing it, like the extra prize is super relevant
I mean, and I
enough
guess like
times.
to talk about the Rayquaza version, you have the fighting energies already, so maybe Zapdos is fine there. That's
Oh yeah,
an
to be fair,
interesting.
I should be clear. The version that
Yeah,
I've been playing Stone in is a Rayquaza version because
yeah,
like you're already playing them.
yeah. I mean, so do you like Zapdos in there either way? I guess because I know some people were playing Zapdos in that deck. Most people weren't, but I've seen it in lists, and like I don't know, just not. I'm really not sold on that one.
I would at least I would try it because the Vika matchup's pretty terrible.
Yeah, pretty heinous.
So and like even just like getting that in there, like even if you don't have the stone, but like you obviously want to play the stone down, but even just like that could tilt that matchup enough.
Yeah.
Like I mean, when I say if you don't get the stone down, it's like if you don't see it before the item lock, it's not like the card just sucks in that
Mm,
matchup.
mm.
You're able to you can realistically take like at least two, maybe four prizes. So, um, I don't know. I think that in a version like that that's already playing the energy, I tried the Zapdos. Uh, I don't know. It seems people go back and forth because I've heard again like a number of name players saying that the Rayquaza one is unfavored in the Mew, and that's not been my testing at all. But
Yeah. Well, my impression from playing the matchup is that the Xander version of the deck with no cross switchers is really bad against it because you need to be able to play hand disruption and gust in one turn.
so maybe that's what it is,
And I
right?
know you played against both me and Zach at locals, who were both playing the no cross switcher Mew deck that week when you played it there.
That's true.
Um,
I've played it
and
a bunch online, but like even then, it's like I've also
yeah.
been keeping the Drapion in because I'm so
Well, and the
that
Drapion is
obviously
the other
tilts
thing
it.
because like I like Pablo's list that doesn't play Drapion and plays double Raikou of the Ray list, and
Mm.
I imagine that might be kind of where that
Yeah,
matchup isn't favored is coming from the no Drapion playing against the more traditional cross switcher builds.
though
Um,
with the stone, that makes me want to play Drapion even more.
oh, for sure, yeah, I'm not arguing. I mean, and you would need
I know.
these
Yeah,
still, so you probably would want to play Drapion. I guess my point is like, yeah, I
yeah,
can see where because I in my head when I played against it the first, I was like, there's no way you can win this matchup, and it's like, well, you probably can, just not with the list that we're playing.
yeah. That makes
Um,
sense.
but also, you're never beating the deck with Drapion and Stone, right? They take four prizes, and then it's just okay. Eventually, we'll kill a Genocide. It's like, all
Yeah, whether it be
right.
through Raikou or Sableye
Yep.
or
This game is
yeah, we'll
very
get there.
over.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm at least intrigued. I want to keep trying. Like, let's be real. I'm probably going to play some version of Lost Box for the better part of the next several
Right,
weeks. So
right.
I'm sure I'll explore all the versions.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps giving. You can throw whatever in there and have a good time.
Yeah.
Um, I guess real quick, any thoughts on Zamazenta? I've played a lot with that one. Have you tried that much?
I have. It's
It's
good.
fine. Yeah,
I think to me it's a better Snorlax. So
that's
like,
my take as well. It does a lot of the Snorlax thing. It does a lot of the Dragonite thing against Regis too. They can't one
yeah,
shot it, so it trades up pretty often, which is good. You know, especially when you're like, it turns your chip damage into like real things when you're sniping the bench for 120 or sprinkling Sableye counters or whatever, which is cool. And it lets you not play. I'm trying not playing Dragonite so you don't have to ever expose yourself to a two prizer.
yeah,
But obviously, we talked about this earlier. Like, it doesn't do the things you want Dragonite for in every matchup, and you have to play Metal Energies, and you know. But I've liked that I can play the Zamazenta, and that has the energy already mostly there to play Amazing Reiko and Amazing
yeah.
Zacian in the Kyogre version, which has been really good. It's been powerful for me. I've liked that deck a lot in my
Yeah.
testing so far. Um,
I'm also convinced we're the only people that like Radiantization. So they're or not
Amazing Zacian.
Amazingization. I'm convinced we're the only ones,
Yeah. I mean, I just
which is fine.
part of this
It's
is
like,
like the commitment to not playing a two prizer to give up because like it's like, oh, you're playing Amazing like because the cards that or matchups that's good against, like you could play Drapion or you could play Dragonite for like Mew or Duraludon.
yep.
So I sort of get the hesitancy to go in on it. But you have the energies for it already, and I'm kind of interested. 300 is just a lot of damage, right? So, and
Yeah.
if you play Belt, it one shots all of the relevant cards.
Yep.
So, all of the relevant VMAXs. But so I'm not sure. I've liked that a lot, and I mean, I go back and forth on whether that card specifically is worth it. There's so many matchups where it's just a dead card, but I think that's fine to have like one tutorable Pokemon that you just don't care about in plenty of matchups, right? If
Yeah,
it's
like you
gonna
said,
swing a couple of them.
you'd rather it be that than something that gives up two prizes. So I get the logic.
Yeah, right. And I agree. I think we both do like that card more than the average person, but I think that's all right. Sometimes we're wrong, sometimes we're right. One day we'll find out.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so let's get into Liverpool real quick. We'll have plenty of time over the next coming weeks to
Oh,
talk
for
about
sure, to talk about these
Zenith
decks.
and yeah. So I want to get into Liverpool and kind of just we only really only have the top eight. Like there's some other deck lists that have come out from
Yeah. So no, we'll focus on the top eight. We do have all of those lists, and yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that.
yeah. So we talked a bunch about Liverpool last week and previewing what we thought was going to happen, and I don't think necessarily you're too surprised by the win, but I do think that the top eight in and of itself was rather interesting.
Yeah, I think the top eight breakdown was not exactly what I expected, or really what anybody expected. Uh, Mew did end up winning the event, which makes my warms my cold dead heart. Love me some Mew, and European Mews, man, built different. It's funny to me that just off topic a little bit, that Mew keeps winning events now when it's like not considered to be the best deck anymore. Like it's won two European regionals after people had kind of written Mew off as a whole,
Yep.
and or won and got second rather. Whatever, I don't know, but just it's just interesting to me. And the deck is obviously still very good. Somebody, like some real player, had tweeted during the day that they don't think Mew beats anything. Had a nice freezing cold takes exposed moment there. So I that made me happy as well. So like the deck
I
is
mean,
good. I know a lot of good players love to hate Mew, but shut up. You're being contrarian.
in their defense, Mew did get to face two Arc Gudra, or sorry, Lost Zone Gudra in the
Well,
top
I don't.
top cut. So
When you're gonna tell me that two decks were in top cut that don't beat Lugia anyway, I'm not really sure what the point here is. Like, yeah, cool. Your deck has bad matchups against two of the three most popular decks.
but it got there though.
Oh, I
Like, I
know,
don't
I
get it
know.
either.
Just to talk about the Mew list that won real
Yeah,
quick. There's nothing.
please.
Yeah, I mean, because we'll get off of this. There's not a ton to talk about. Nothing too crazy here. They did play two Lost City, two Path, and a Collapse Stadium. I haven't been a big Collapse Stadium fan in Mew. I haven't really tried it, I guess, to be honest. But just like conceptually, it doesn't jive with what the deck wants to do for me. And the matchups where it's good, I just don't think that's like the reliable way to beat those matchups. I don't think it has a high enough impact against Lost Box or against Regis when you play it one time and have no way to recur it for you to really flip the matchup at all, especially when you're already playing multiple lost cities in this list to beat Reggie's. I'm not really sure what the logic for the collapse stadium is. I know the winner did make a Twitter post, but I didn't see them talk about that at all, and I didn't think to ask. So maybe I'll run back and give that a quick check. But other than that, nothing too exciting here. The other thing they played was an Echoing Horn, which goes in and out of lists. Personally, I had felt like that card is a little bit win more in Mew unless you're playing Avery to try to brick Reggie's for an extra turn, which is super reasonable, but definitely also not necessary once you're playing, again, multiple lost cities. So, overall, solid list. Nothing to really talk about here other than that, though. Any thoughts on that list, Corey?
Like I liked it. It's kind of well, you said there's some cards that we didn't necessarily play. When we were like talking about Oppression Mew, it's not that far off either in the sense that like if we tweaked a couple things, I could reasonably get there, and we've been a pretty big fan of Oppression Mew throughout
Yeah, I
this
still believe
format.
that this
So
deck is better than most people think it is. I mean, again, I've said before that your Lugia matchup is just actually really good. I still believe that. I think this is the deck that goes second the best against Lugia, especially, which most decks are not very good at. Um, and you do have some difficult Lost Box matchups against various versions, but I think this version, back to the cross switchers, has the three hand, well, four if you count Roxanne, but the maximum hand disruption you can really fit in there.
mhm.
Double boss orders instead of a boss and a Serena, so you can chase down the right cards against Lost Box. So I think this is like a good list for that. It has the Parasol as well, which I found can be really key in that matchup. The only card that it's not playing that I would really like to see is the Big Charm. That was the one thing from Xander's list that I actually have adopted as just being like a staple. I think that card is really, really good. And I'm not against playing it and Parasol, but I definitely would want the Big Charm. So, and I'm gonna guess that matchup is the reason they went with the Collapse Stadium. But again, for me, that just hasn't ever felt like enough. I don't feel like you're pressuring them enough with that, but could be wrong. Definitely, I guess the one thing that I need to try coming out of this event.
Before we move on to any of the other decks, the other Mew deck that was in top eight was a fusion version of the
Yeah, Fusion
Meloetta Mew.
Strike, Meloetta Mew.
Any interest in touching on that one as well? I know
Yeah,
that
we can talk
you've
about it. I don't have a ton to say about this list personally. They went with so like at different points, Mellow Mew has played like the one Path to Peak in Roxanne that old DTMU list played. This one completely skipped that. There's no Roxanne or Path, which I thought was interesting. They're not really going for any sort of comeback mechanic using all of the card draw and search in the deck. They're just trying to set up an attack, which is also made very obvious by the triple Sparkle. I know some people play two. Um, I like that they played the V Guard. I think that's becoming standard if it's not like
mhm.
completely standard, but I think that's a good inclusion. Three flip catchers, I like that count as well. Um, I haven't been like sold on the necessity of playing Oricorio in the Meloetta Mew decks. So that's probably the one thing that I don't love that's going on in here. And one judge just feels a little bit, I don't know, random and goofy. I would probably rather switch that to a Roxanne and fit the Path of the Peak in somewhere. But overall, I've played a decent amount of this deck. I really do prefer Oppression Mew. But this deck has some decent matchups. It's a deck that, if it hits its combo, it can beat just about anything just by donking them turn one. So, nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, Moving on to the probably I would say the surprise of the tournament is two Arceus. Or sorry, I keep saying Arceus because I'm just so used to saying
Since you
Arceus
sing
with
Arceus
Gudra.
Gudra, yeah.
Two
Lawson
Gudra
Gudra.
Lawson. Yeah. After it got two top 32 slots the week, or what, 2 weeks before in the
Yeah.
U.S., it Stefan got second place with it, and then there was
Mhm.
another player that got into the top eight. I did jokingly pick Stefan to win the event last
Yeah, well,
week
you
on
were
our pod.
close.
I would not have picked him if I knew he was playing Lost Zone Goo, but that's neither here nor there. But I think his take on the list is pretty interesting because it's different than what we've seen previously with this. There's no Melanies, there's four capture energy, and beyond that, there's no heal whatsoever. It's a tanky deck, and it kind of just does what it wants to
Yeah.
do,
Well, and I
right?
think no Melanie is kind of the standard for the Lost Zone versions. If it's not, then I forgive me, but everything
No,
I've
I could be
seen,
outdated.
most stuff I've seen has been playing it lately. I think for capture is a little bit of a, I don't want to call it an innovation. Capture is just like a good card, but I don't
It
think
is
most people
adaptation.
were playing a full playset in there, which I do think is really good. Every time that I put more capture energies in my deck, I'm always impressed. I mean, if you've been listening to the podcast, I just hate energy cards. They're just the worst. But capture energy breaks that. It's a good energy card,
Well, yeah,
and
you like energy cards that actually do something.
yeah, well, so you get the best of both worlds when you play cards like capture. Though you have a card that does something and provides energy,
Yeah.
which like it sounds really stupid when you dumb it down to that level, but like that's just what it is. Like energy cards don't do anything a lot of the time, but capture energy does. So if you need more energies, that's good.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, no, I like Stefan's list. The thing that was interesting to me in like the main deck construction was that he only played one Cramorant.
Hmm.
And then I've seen a decent number of people, neither list in top eight here did this, but play two Gudra Vs and then play Thornton instead of the third, similar to what Giratina was doing for a while. Um, both these lists played three Gudra. I think I would prefer the three Gudra. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I understood it more in Giratina because you were probably not attacking with Giratina until the late game. With Gudra, after like turn two, turn three, you probably expect to be attacking with Gudra for every turn of the game. So yeah, I would much prefer three. I understand the one cram. I don't know that I necessarily agree, but
Mm-hmm.
like I just said, their whole point is they're probably not attacking with it much, so you probably never really need it and play all that often. So I get why you don't necessarily need more than one.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's not something that I'd really thought too much about. It's just such a good card in the Lost Zone decks, and I've tested just one in some Lost Box, so I guess I'm not terribly surprised to see this version just play it as a one of. Um, Other things that he did, we touched on this one offline. There's double Roxanne in his list. The other list in top eight doesn't play any, and I'm not intimately familiar enough with Lost Zone Gudra to know if any Roxanne or multiple is even standard, but I thought that was an interesting, not really like a surprising choice, but I thought that was a good adaptation as well. I think that Roxanne in this deck especially is really, really good.
Yeah, so if you could, not that anything's really standard because Gudra does not see a lot of
I
play.
mean, it's seen a
If you
lot of online play over the last 2 or 3 weeks now, though.
yeah. What I mean is like I don't know that anything's really been standardized to
Gotcha.
that
Kind of
point.
still like
So
a an emerging archetype in a way.
yeah, because we saw like at the last regional where the Sosos were playing it, they were playing it with three Marnie and no Roxanne, but and they were doing the 2-3 Gudra thing like you said. So um I think that we're kind of still kind of figuring out where things go with this deck. Like I agree with you. I think that I really like the two Roxanne. This is a deck that like a lot of decks aren't really going to get to take advantage of
Mm,
two because you're not in the end game for very long. Gudra's kind of in the end game, like I said, starting from like turn 3 or 4. And if you're sacrificing prizes early and then they take that first Gudra knockout, if you're able to Roxanne them once
right.
and then again, like they're probably not like if they're getting out of it, they're probably not winning that turn
Right.
because you resist so much damage and you probably still have your Moisture Star to heal all the damage off. So
Right.
if you're able to then Roxanne them a second time, that could be just so backbreaking.
Yeah, they get you down. I mean, you're obviously trading some early prizes, but they eat your comfies. Maybe you chip some damage in with a Cramorant attack or a Gradient Greninja attack to set up your prize trade for the rest of the game. And then they kill your first Gudra, you Roxanne them, and Rolling Iron. There's no way they're one shotting your Gudra and ending the game that turn. You get the Moisture Star off the damage, Roxanne them again. I mean, it's very hard for most decks to beat.
Yeah.
Um, Interestingly, like the deck, we talked about this earlier in the cast, but the deck is purportedly not very good against Lugia or Mew. So it surprises me to see two of them in top cut. Do you have any thoughts on the matchup? Any like, are you surprised by that as well? What are your thoughts here?
I am. I think that, like you said, I think the matchup spread's just not great. Like I understood why there was enough, like why you could get into the top 32, like why we saw that with the Sosos,
And I'm not
because
even surprised to see one in top eight, right? Sometimes it's just matchup lottery.
yeah. But the fact that it happened for two of them, when like you said, the Lugia matchup's
Yeah,
just atrocious, is just bizarre. I don't know. I think that I mean, good on them. Like if you hit enough Reggies or lost boxes
right.
nonsense throughout the day, like that probably shapes up to be a pretty good day for you because like I don't know how Reggie's beats this deck.
Right,
So
right. One the interesting thing that Stefan leaned into was not playing any big parasols, which is normally pretty standard in the deck from what I've seen, and he went with zero parasol and just accepted that like Evital and Mew was just or in Lugia, excuse me, was just going to be difficult for him to handle. That was just like a thing you take an L to, which is both bold, but something we've talked about before in deck building, where when you're playing like an off the beaten path deck or a deck with like difficult matchups. So we lost Corey.
I'm still here. I don't know
Okay,
if you
just
can.
lost his
Yeah,
video. That's
my
fine. All right,
video.
whatever.
Yeah,
But in a deck that's like got polarizing or a difficult matchup spread, like sometimes you just have to take your L. You can't prepare for everything.
yeah, and I honestly don't even hate it because
No, I don't
like
mind it at all. I actually was calling that out as a good deck building choice if
yeah,
that wasn't clear.
no, yeah, I'm stressing that I agree with you. Yeah, because like so even in a world where they are able to like get like which they probably will set up the Yveltal, they're not going to do it twice,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still going like Lugia probably will be able to swing through, but
Yeah.
like
Well, and they have to do it through Temple of Sinnoh too. Like,
that's what I mean. So like I don't think I think it's a hedge worth taking because the card's pretty terrible elsewhere. Like I mean
right.
it's not like other decks where it helps a lot in the Lost Box matchup. Your Lost Box matchup is just fine without it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. This deck is not overly concerned about what Lost Box is doing to you. Yeah, I think that's a very good choice and a reasonable adaptation as well. I'm trying to think, just looking at these, if there's anything else interesting or different to call out, but I think that's kind of it as far as choices that Stefan made. He did play Zero Marnie. I know we mentioned the Roxanne's already, but no Marnie is kind of an interesting choice, but something that I also am pretty on board with. I think the early game you want to be playing Chorus's experiments, and then as the game gets later, we have those two Roxannes that you want to play, or just be bossing up targets.
yep, yeah, no, I agree.
So, I
I kind
mean,
of like that more.
obviously, Stefan is one of the best to do it. No one should be surprised that he did well at this event. And if you're interested in playing Gudra, take note of his adaptations. The only thing he has said about the list since the event is that he didn't really think Raihan was very good, but didn't have a better 60th card in mind. So, use that as your flex spot if you're messing with it.
Yeah, and the list that Vinny played to get into the top eight was I haven't compared the two next to each other, but they're let me I can actually do that because I still have Sosa's list up. But from what I can tell, they're almost identical, if not completely identical. So,
Now, he did the thing
uh,
where you play two Gudra V, but no Thornton, and still three V stars.
well that's what Sosa did as
Oh,
well.
okay. I thought they were playing Thornton in those lists. Interesting.
I think that was a thing more
I
like
hate that.
online. Yeah,
I hate that.
yeah. I mean it's a card off. Oh, I think yeah. So Sosa played a third capture energy, whereas this plays a second and absent item card, which I'm not finding immediately. But yeah, the point still stands that it's essentially the same list. Yeah, I prefer Stefan's take on the deck honestly.
Yeah, again, one of the best to do it. Take notice when he builds a deck, and if he can justify his choices, especially which he's normally pretty honest when he's like not happy with a card, and the only card he wasn't thrilled with was the Raihan. I definitely defer to him on this one.
Yeah, for sure. Funny enough, I figured out the change. It was actually funny enough to put in a Raihan. So
That's funny.
yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, so moving on from there, there was one Lost Box deck in Top Cut. It made the top four with the Rayquaza. Nothing too like out of the ordinary
Mm-hmm.
here. I don't think. From what I'm looking at, it looks like a pretty standard list, like what we've come to expect from uh the Lost Ray deck at this point. It was only playing the one Raikou, so I know you said you like the Pablo list more than this because it plays the two, which I can absolutely get behind. But other than that, anything that really jumps out at you here, this looks pretty standard to me.
Yeah, this is very straightforward for the Rayquaza list. There's not a lot interesting happening here. I think that the only thing that hasn't been completely standard in my experience is playing the Galarian Zigzagoon, but with Raikou, that makes a huge difference in your Reggie matchup.
Hmm.
Again, I would like to see the second Raikou, but other than that, I mean, I think this is a fine version of the Rayquaza Lost Box deck, and I don't have much to comment on it.
No, me too. So, moving on to Lugia, the ostensible best deck in the format. There was two in Top Cut again. First, looking at Roz's deck. This play the technology that we've talked a little bit about since, where they're playing Irida so that they can search out their canceling cologne when necessary. other than that, it's a pretty normal list. We've talked a lot offline since the reveal of the Irida slash Skyla tech. I know that Tord played Skyla. Um, I really like it. I like. I
Yeah,
was.
no, huge miss by us. Done this podcast, talked about how we're gonna beat Aerodactyl, and said, "Oh, I guess we'll need to play more researches so we can draw our colognes."
Yeah, because we were on
We
Cologne. We both said last week that was going to be the
That's
version
the
that
way
we
to play the
liked was with
deck.
Cologne. Yeah,
We have been playing formats where Skyla was a good card to just search your engine, not even to search tech. And it did not occur to us to play Skyla or better Skyla.
yeah.
Um, Huge miss, but what are you going to do? Sometimes you miss the obvious stuff. And I think playing the one copy of Irida slash Skyla is definitely the way to go. Um, I've talked a little bit before about like not really liking choice belt in the deck, but there's a number of situations where like having one to fix numbers is great. When you're able to Luminion for either Irida or Skyla and search your one choice belt, that gets a lot better. That gives you additional access to Lost Vacuum if you need to clear a Parasol or a path on a key turn. I think the one Irida is great. Um, in most of these lists, it seems like people were making the choice between playing Skyla slash Irida and their switch card. I also think that's kind of nonsense. You can just play an item as your switch, and then you can still Luminion for switch, so you don't have to choose to lose the Paralyze either.
I you know that I agree with you. I think that that's a very good adaptation for it, and I think that it kind of like just
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll just use this list as an example. Just like looking at it,
yep,
just take your third V star out for a switch, like a literal switch, brick switch.
it is that simple, isn't it?
Done.
Like it just gives you so much more room for like this goes without saying, but having the accessibility to search your deck for anything like that is just such a
Right,
strong suit,
right.
and like I can't imagine like now that I've seen it, I can't imagine not playing it.
Yeah, I agree completely. And then the one thing that I want to shout out that's obviously not in these lists, it's a Crown Zenith card, but plays well with the Irida as well. One card we didn't talk about last week on our set review is the just regular, like, rare Kyogre from the set. It's not an impressive card by any means, but for 4 energies, it can snipe anything on the bench for 180. And you can power that up with Lugia, obviously. There's definitely game states where a 180 snipe is going to be the easiest way for you to close a game out. And that's just another target that you can search with Irida if you choose to go that way over Skyla. Um, do you have a preference on Irida versus Skyla in the deck? So the difference, uh, for those of you listening, is Skyla can search any trainer cards. So Skyla can search a stadium if you choose to play one. Skyla can search other supporters to set you up for a later turn. Whereas Irida gets a water Pokemon and an item only.
I think I lean Irida,
Now, is
but
that conditional on playing double Luminion? So if you played one Luminion, so you just had one Luminion and Manaphy to search, does that change your opinion?
I
For me, I'll say it does right now. And I say that, but I also don't see any way that I'm cutting my second Luminion from Lugia. That card is very good in Lugia, and I'm pretty married to playing two.
that's part of it, right? Is that I you worded it exactly how I would have. There's no world where I'm not playing two, I don't think, unless
Yeah,
something
yeah.
drastic changes. So I don't see where I wouldn't. But even still, I just think that like am I going to play a stadium? Realistically, probably not. Like at this point, I don't know that we really would.
Yeah, I mean,
And
there's like some consideration still for Collapse Stadium, though I think like the realization has sort of been if you play both Raikou and Stoutland as well as Manaphy and Dunsparce, you beat Regis anyway, or at
that's
least
what I
are
mean.
like decent against Regis. I think that sort of clears enough gaps for me that I'm not worried enough about it to play that. And yeah, I'm with you.
And if I'm going to play Skyla to search a supporter, I like like
Yeah.
you just said, we've played in a bunch of formats where Skyla's good. That always sucks.
Well,
So
yeah, so you do it sometimes, right? But the other thing here is if you're playing double Luminion, Irida does search supporter as well as your item
correct,
card. You just have to have two
correct.
Luminions. So, like, I guess if I was ever in a spot where it's like, ooh, I think I'm going to play Skyla, it would really have to be because I wanted to search my stadium because I felt that having like a copy of Lost City in the deck would swing a matchupper
Yep.
that I thought Collapse Stadium was really key. But as it is, yeah. I mean, for full reference here, the list I have sleeved up for Lugia right now it is exactly this deck list minus the third V star for a switch.
Nice. I like that. Not
Excuse
trying the
me.
Kyogre yet. I feel that.
Yeah, not trying the Kyogre. I can't figure out what I want to cut for it. I like all of the
Yeah,
Pokemon that are in here, and I also like having a Switch. If I was gonna try the Kyogre, I would probably just accept my L on the Switch, or play one less draw supporter. I don't know.
that's fair. That's fair. Uh, Kim Pobega's list is quite different. If you have not looked at that yet, it plays 3-2 Lugia. It plays like some most of the normal attackers, though it does fit in a Drapion. Two Research, two Marnie, two Boss, one Serena, one Birdkeeper. Uh, two canceling clones, so I do still like that. It does play the collapse stadium, and then its energy is four powerful, four aurora, two capture, two double turbo, heat, speed, and hiding darkness.
Yeah, so somebody decided they really wanted to have options to use as many of their attackers in one game as possible.
And I
Um,
can appreciate that, but
and they're doing that at the cost of a lot of consistency because you're losing
yeah,
both capture energies and draw supporters to do that. On top of playing an additional attacker in the Drapion. So I don't love this list. I've tried a lot of different things with the energies, and early on we kind of identified that three capture felt like the minimum. You really want to play four if you can. Um, it's just too helpful in setting up, and then even just as a proactive like combo piece almost in the later game, like you want to be able to attach it to search your attacker for the turn and retreat without burning your Archeops attachments. So I just cannot get behind that. There's also so few matchups where you need that many colored energies in one game. You very few matchups where you want to attack with Yveltal, Raikou, and Charizard in the same game, right? That's just not how most matchups work. That's not how prize mapping works, and it's insanely greedy no matter how you spin it. You're just not going to have them in your deck most of the time.
yep, no, I agree.
So
I just prefer the other version. Like, I mean, if you're running hot, that's probably the ideal version because like if you're running hot, having access to that many
yeah,
attackers is broken. But like, I think I would prefer
yeah,
more
you
what we
just don't
saw.
need to hedge on like you know what I mean. You don't need to play to high roll with Lugia. You're playing the broken deck already. You don't,
I agree.
and that's like I guess to go back to what I just said about Stefan's deck. When you're playing a deck that's like fringe, that's not inherently super powerful, that's not doing the best thing in the room, yeah, you have to make choices like that. Sometimes you have to choose to go for high rolls. You don't in Lugia. You want to make your deck very consistent. You want to be prepared for all your matchups, but you don't want to do anything crazy because your deck is just so good already.
Hmm.
Uh, the innovation of the weekend was legit playing something that searches canceling clone instead of extra canceling clones. That's it. That's all you had to do.
Yeah, no, yep, I agree. I think we're in the same place with that
Yeah.
deck.
But yeah, I think this list is super greedy. Three discard supporters only, too. I mean, I think four is the bare minimum. Um, and yeah, I think we've covered everything about this list already, but it's funny because ultimately that's like five cards,
Yeah, it
maybe
feels
more
weird
than
being
that,
that specific on
to
like that many.
five or six cards, yeah. And it's funny that that makes me feel like, oh, this is disgusting when 54 of the cards are 54, 55 are just the cards you're going to play either way. But in a game like Pokemon where you have so many search cards and access to so many different parts of your deck, like that is the difference.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. The last deck is actually
The
and
one we
this
want
is
to
me.
talk about the most, I'm sure.
Well, and that actually gets to what I was about to say is this is podcast planning on the fly, but also I want to play this deck more before we actually talk. I want to. So how about we do a deep dive on this deck next week?
Do you think you're going to play enough of this deck to do that?
Oh yeah, I think this is going to be the deck that I'm going to play the most over the next week. Every time I play it, I find myself liking it more. For anyone that does not know, this is Sander Wojcik's Pikachu Flying Pikachu control deck, and I immediately sent it to DJ whenever it was revealed,
Yeah.
and I thought it looked terrible. And then I started playing it online, and every game I play with it, I'm like, wait a minute, this is better than I think it is. I don't necessarily think it's as good as like the innovations that he's made earlier in the season, but
I really want to
like
know. I know he always ends up talking about his deck lists a little bit,
yes,
so we can get some more information. I think like there is nothing I would like more than to like build a brew, and not even necessarily a control deck, but just like get into his mind while we build a deck. That
yes,
would be
absolutely.
fascinating because I don't know how you end up with this deck list. Even like when he explains it, I'm gonna go, "Oh, that all makes sense." I still don't know how you would get there. I
Did you
just
see his explanation for
the
the
one crushing hammer
yeah
sure did. You know, it sounds like nonsense even when he says it. That.
that yeah
Yeah.
yeah I
did you
love that
see?
because
Did you see the meme before you go where somebody posted?
The flying Pikachu.
Sanders flying Pikachu, and it just had a crushing hammer in each hand. You know how pissed I was that he only plays one crushing hammer, so that wasn't even real.
That's so funny. I mean, Regieleki gets it back as many times as you want.
Sure could.
I mean, the deck is nonsense, but like that, like it's the kind of nonsense that you and I both appreciate. So like, if this was like maybe the Snorlax deck that did not make it into the top eight, for anyone that didn't see, there was a Snorlax with Cherim that just kind of put its rain dance for I think grass energies on non-Roblox
Yeah.
Pokemon. Like we wouldn't be doing it. I would not be interested in doing a deep dive on that. But anytime Sander puts out a deck, I know I'm going to probably play like 100 games with it over the course of the next week. I just because I love it, and I would have honestly, I would be more prepared if PTCG Live was not doing maintenance today while we're recording, but they did, so I didn't get to play any today.
Yeah.
So I want to actually like have a lot of thoughts on this before we discuss it because I know it's something like I said, anytime there's a control deck, even if it's not Sander, but let's be real, it's always
It's
Sander.
normally Sander.
You
This
and I
is just
will
such an
obsess over
this
these.
is such an interesting list too. Like we've got only two Gormandized Snorlax. We've got an unfazed Fat Snorlax, just in here chilling. We've got 14 energy cards
That does not sound like Sander, but
for a
it's
deck that,
bizarre.
yeah, an archetype that we're used to barely attacking. I mean, the energy numbers have gone up ever since Quad Evil Tool became kind of the standard in control.
Yeah, but 14.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot for sure. A flying Pikachu line. Just like there's so much going on here. Two Regielekis with the sonar attack to add an item back from your discard pile, or a trainer actually. It's not short sell bad Lecky. Um,
Yeah, it's not bad in this deck. It's bad in the Regis.
yeah. It's a necessary evil in Regis.
Yep.
I mean, and then we've got just like we said already, one crushing hammer, one yell horn, one trekking shoes,
One Thornton.
an extremely interesting supporter line. Yeah, one Thornton, one Bruno.
Oh, so you may have missed this because he did say he would cut the trekking shoes and the hammer.
Okay, yeah, I didn't look at any of his posts yet.
Yeah.
I
So he
haven't
said that.
involved myself in this one.
Well, see, that was why I asked you if you'd seen what he posted because it is that ridiculous. He said that he had submitted the list on Arcanine Labs the first time on like Wednesday and went back and updated it, but it didn't save. So
Oh,
he cut the shoes and he cut the hammer for a fourth Speed Lightning and a second Sydney.
15 energies.
You heard what I said.
I did.
So
I did.
it just gets weirder.
Also, like
And
zero pal pad. Like it's just an incredibly interesting deck list, and I mean he's another one that like whatever he does, I'm sure makes a lot of sense. But his his mindset in Pokemon operates so differently than everybody else's, and like it's funny because normally I'm a person that does believe there's like an optimal line for playing most games, but you know, Sander just like has this very different outlook on how to map your way through a game of Pokemon than most players, I think.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that he's necessarily right or wrong, but he certainly makes the argument that like there's always a best way to play. Very confusing.
yeah, he's something else because like there's no one like
Truly
you look.
alternatively constructed.
Well, we just sat here and said that like there's only like 5 to 6 different cards from one deck to the other, and
No, he plays 40 different cards every weekend.
yeah, so it's just like there's no one that's gonna make me think more from event to
Mm-hmm.
event than Sanders. So it's like not
Agree
not just
completely.
because like I want to see him do well every time because I want to see what's next. I always want to see what the nonsense is gonna be, and this
Yeah.
did it.
Yep, for sure. I mean, I guess that covers the regional then. Let's circle back on this one next week, do our homework, and talk about this one some more.
Absolutely.
Just in closing thoughts, I guess. So, officially, this is the first week of Crown Zenith tournaments. If you had an event this weekend, whether that's a local, a bigger online tournament, I've seen some people doing some like release tournaments for Crown Zenith product. What would you be playing? Would you be bringing to the tournament?
Um, do I want to give myself the highest chance
To
of
win,
winning,
you're
or
if yeah. What would you play this weekend if your goal was to win the tournament?
probably something like the Lost Box deck you and I have gone back and forth on with Kyogre and Zamazenta and all that stuff. It's the thing I'm most a
Yeah,
believer in. I thought that deck was already argued like you could make an
that
argument
that was
for
the
it
best
being
deck.
the best deck last format, or like not last form. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it is last
pre
format,
Crown
but
Zenith.
only
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of. Um, yeah. So it's tough for me to argue against that.
for sure.
If I was going to like local, like Locals tonight is another example. If I was going to that, if I had the Rotoms, I'd be playing that tonight. But I don't, so I'm going to be playing Lost Box.
Yeah, yeah, no, I guess like if I was playing something and I just wanted to try it and have a good time, I would be playing Shadow Rider. That's the
Yeah,
new deck that I want to play just to try. So that would be my like meme deck or like playing in just like a league or what you win doesn't matter. If I'm trying to win a tournament, we're on the same page. So I'm playing Kyogre Lost Box, probably kind of the version we've been working on a lot with Raikou and Zamazenta and all that jazz. We've been putting it. I've put a decent bit of work in. We've talked about it a lot. I do like that deck a ton.
yeah, no, absolutely. It's what I like the most, so I would go with that.
Mhm,
But
yeah, but
hopefully by next week we'll have more of a defined online scene because like while Zenith did come out last Friday, there has not been like a lot of
not a
the
ton.
norm.
And I
Yeah,
mean,
so
there was also a regional that people were playing this weekend, so not a ton of reason for the European part of the world to be playing online Crown Zenith tournaments
I agree. I agree. So we will be looking at probably the results of those next week and getting
for
into
sure.
like looking ahead to the first regional because Orlando is not this coming weekend, but next weekend. So that'll be the first Zenith
Yeah,
regional.
yeah,
So
exactly. So we'll have to start looking at what we think will be happening there, and if any of these new cards are going to make a real impact.
for sure, for sure. But that's it for this week. So definitely like, subscribe, follow, rate, review, all that stuff.
Yeah, don't forget
Sorry,
to check us out on YouTube as well, guys. Even though you don't get to see Corey's face for about half the episode, but hey, it's all right. You can still see my incredibly disgusting physique.
that's all you can really ask for. And a dinosaur lamp.
Banger lamp, right?
It absolutely is. But yeah, we'll catch you guys next week on Ancient Wisdom.
Thanks, guys.